Very beautiful time of the year to sit at retreat together, particularly on such a lovely spot as this camp on the lake. Driving down this afternoon, early in the afternoon, some of the trees, part of the trees, ablaze with translucent color. Leaves don't seem to be afraid of ending. They go in total splendor. And dropping is completely effortless. Yesterday, standing on top of the road looking down toward the forest on the Springwater land, there was this constant dance of single leaves gliding and floating, twirling through the air, in no hurry to get to the ground. Natural things don't seem to be afraid of ending. Why are we? There's so many different people together at this retreat. Some of us have sat countless retreats, and some of us have not been to any. Can we all start this retreat and sit it as beginners? Surely all of us, I don't think there's anyone here who hasn't read loads about sesshin, retreats, Zen. We're all filled with knowledge, the knowledge of what we've read and what we've experienced, and the experience of others. And we depend on that, and we act on that. Never, the mind is never free. We all know something about enlightenment and about ignorance. And we all want to get something, acquire or attain something. As long as we want to attain and acquire, we need knowledge to help us get it, remember it, maintain it. Yet there's a completely different way of letting this mind function as an instrument of inquiry, of questioning. Not of accumulating, but of freely attending, looking, out of the emptiness of not knowing. So is it possible for each one of us, from day to day and moment to moment, to drop or put aside what we have accumulated and to which we're attached, on which we depend, what we know about ourselves and this work and Zen and retreats and Kensho, put it completely aside, be free of it. And therefore the mind be in a new state of wondering, not knowing, attending, questioning. A few things have already been mentioned by Debbie and Sally that help us living together here for the next 7 days in an orderly way, helpful to everyone. I will mention a few more things. The first one being silence, stillness, quietness. In sitting, we're asking, not as an arbitrary rule, but because people wish to sit that way, that we not move during the round of 35 minutes, to remain motionless if possible. This is not a measure to learn how to endure pain or any such purposes, but to sit quietly so that there is no sound, no rustling. It's a tremendous thing to experiment with this oneself. Because energy does gather in this motionlessness, and one doesn't disturb each other. One learns so much about the coming and going of discomfort. One may think by moving around the discomfort will go away, but most of the time one moves into a worse position. May bring about a cramp that wasn't there before. And nothing has changed. Can one let alone whatever is there to work itself out as it will, in the presence of attention, wondering, not knowing what this state is one finds oneself in, and not doing anything about it. Please don't talk to each other during a retreat, except in meetings or in case of an emergency. If there is an emergency, you need to talk to someone quickly, please go someplace with this person, indicate to the person to follow you, and go someplace where you're not seen and heard by others. If it's not an emergency, there are pencils and papers in many different spots throughout this house. please use them to write a note, short and concise, and sign the note if you're going to leave it on somebody's place. Well, sign it in all cases. And if you get a note and need to respond, also use pencil and paper. And yet, here too, one must beware that one doesn't become a note writer, and a new way of finding expression for oneself. One is here to question the self, not to express it. Expression maintains it, reinforces it, but doesn't question it. What is it that always wants to feel that it exists? One will notice that making sounds is such a way of feeling that one exists, but attending to the sounds quiets them down. If one becomes aware of walking heavily through the sitting area or in the hall, up the stairs, if there's really awareness, one hears it, then there's no need to continue with it if it's possible to walk softly. To be careful with opening and closing doors, particularly the bathroom doors, which are near the dormitories. People are resting there. And if there's an openness and sensitivity for each other, one understands that somebody resting needs quiet, and one opens the door quietly. It follows. It works hand in hand. To beware that one doesn't create a new image for oneself as the silent or super silent one, more silent or more quiet than everybody else. These things happen so quickly and are all worthy of observation and dropping, so that whatever happens is free of self-image. Can only be free of self-image if the image is detected, seen, and seen as an obstacle, a veil, a separation. Obviously there are some unavoidable sounds which are alright. It's this extra stuff, which usually, if one watches it carefully, serves to confirm or assert one's existence as somebody. Along with the not moving during a round of sitting goes the not moving of the eyeballs, to have the eyes not completely shut during sitting and not completely open, if possible, not looking straight ahead. It's more conducive to a quietness in the brain if the eyes are, or the eyelids are half closed. Each one needs to find their own relaxed position for the eyes, of this not being completely closed, not being completely open, and not rolling around underneath the shutters. One will find that if one looks around a lot, the brain is constantly registering interpreting, associating with what is seen, comparing. Whereas if the eyes are not used to looking around, but they're in this posture that we just described, there's a possibility for the brain to quiet down. It is not stimulated to do this habitual work of knowing, being informed, and with all the associations that are triggered. If you go outside for a walk, you can experiment with it. To look is when looking then to see something, or is there just the looking? Not me looking at that, not me or that, just looking. Is that possible? Whether it's looking down to the water, to the pebbles, up to the sky or the leaves and the trees, across the lake, or as one just walks, the eyes down or up. What is there? When there's nobody trying to grasp something. Speaking of walking, you're not required to be in the sitting hall at any time. If you wish to come to meetings, be here for the time that the group is called up to go to meetings. Other than that, you do not need to be here. Possible to sit outside or in crouch hall, go for a walk, or if you need to rest, as long as you don't walk around upstairs during a sitting period in the upper floor, which would be a disturbance to the sitting down here. It is advisable not to read or write during a retreat. As we mentioned in the beginning of this talk, the mind is already so burdened with what it knows. Why add to it? If there's anything to read, it is to read this mind as it unravels, reveals itself from moment to moment, not in accordance to what one already knows, but what happens, what is actually happening this instant. To see it, be with it, and let go of it as it ends. Mealtime is actually the same room, just on the other side of the divider. Can one be free of ideas of how much or how little to eat? Be sensitive to what is needed, without overeating or undereating, attentive as one eats, observing all the habits associated with eating. Let them come into the light of awareness so that they can be maybe dropped. One is not ruled by them. One has so many different unconscious eating habits, habits of greed, gulping down fast without attending at all. There's no rush to get done with the eating, and yet there are people who have to clean up. To be sensitive, both to the needs of the body and to each other, to each other's jobs. We'll talk about eating every once in a while before breakfast, and about the work, which each one does about for 1 hour. There too can there be awareness in how one works. This time is not just to get the job done, even though the job has to get done. This retreat is a self-functioning and self-sustained unit. Can one be with it? With each moment being sufficient unto itself, not to get it done or get it over with, but just doing it. Without any eye out for a result. At 9:30, the formal sitting ends. If one is exhausted, it's a good thing to get rest or to walk in the fresh air, which is so marvelous in the fall. It is so brisk, cool. Not to feel ashamed if one is tired and goes to bed, even if others are not asleep. Can one be aware of how much one is dependent on what other people think, influenced by it, and maybe free oneself of this influence, do what one needs to do, regardless of what others are doing or not doing? If one is not tired, one can walk or come back to the sitting hall. Some people wonder what tiredness is as it strikes one, maybe in the middle of a round, so tired. Most people who come here have worked hard either to prepare for the retreat, people who've been working on the building project and have still come in today to prepare for retreat, and people at the city center have prepared probably for the last 1 or 2 weeks for this retreat. So one is exhausted when one arrives, and of course people who are not connected with the center have jobs and families, may have done just as much preparation. Get work done ahead of time, take care of children, husbands, families, to make this week available. So in sitting, when there's tiredness, either one goes to bed. If one sits, can one wonder about tiredness and the attention being there, right in the midst of it, or the questioning, not calling it tiredness, not reviewing all the work one has done, and already the thought makes one tired. What is it? If one doesn't call it by any name, doesn't know about it, doesn't think about it, approaches it completely innocently, then it is nothing that it's ever been before. Cannot be. Can one, in a retreat such as this, realize directly how distorting our past knowledge is, distorting of the present moment, so it becomes unavailable to be lived as it is in depth and fullness? If one wakes up in the middle of the night, wide awake, even though it's cold out, why not get up and come down, sit or walk outside rather than tossing back and forth in the bed? One may try that, but if one is unable to sleep, why not sit? It doesn't matter in a retreat what time of day or night it is. It doesn't matter at all. You don't have to go to work in the morning. You don't have to get up. If you sleep in the morning and don't want to be woken up, write a note that you don't want to be woken up. But if you need to sit, then sit. If you're awake, be awake. We have so many ideas, how many hours we should sleep and what time we should go to sleep, what time we should get up, what is best for us. These are all ideas. It may change. It may not be so in a retreat or at any time. If there's an awakening of sensitivity and a dropping of ideas. About meetings, it has been mentioned that a person leaving the meeting room will please open first, of course, the meeting room door and leave that open, and then open the door to the waiting room. I'm not using the bell anymore, not for the past several retreats, and has worked very well without it. This also has a deeper significance than just not ringing this bell. But the ending of the meeting is the responsibility of both of us. There are always people waiting. And yet if one needs to bring something up, something needs to be looked at thoroughly, and we can do it together, we can go into something and question it together. Yet there comes a moment when it's clear the meeting is at an end. Can we see this both together and part without one person doing it for the other? About the stick, it's been also mentioned that, in case you don't remember it, you will not be hit at all unless you indicate either by moving your head when the coordinator comes by that you wish to be struck, or if you want to be struck, at the coordinator's discretion to write a note to one of them. You may change your mind after you've been struck. Or from one day to the next, just there's enough paper there, you can write a new note. Don't hang on the idea of consistency, it's an idea. Things change. But if you think you ought to change, that's an idea. Is it possible to live and act and be without ideas? It almost seems impossible. So what's necessary is to become aware of them, how they rule our life and are a veil, a separation. Hide what's there, actually. there are several empty mats in the hall here. They're reserved for people who will come later, and there will be some people who leave an empty mat. Somebody else will take it, we'll keep it there. If not, we'll remove it.
Increase from $15 to $20 a month. They're from Orangevale, California, and they're giving because of the many blessings and because we're reaching out throughout the world and because Jesus is their Savior. We say thank you for sharing.
Okay, right now we want to remind our listeners at the top of the hour that
It's an amazing thing, a retreat like this where one does sit together and yet sits alone. Or does one? One does not sit alone if one is constantly wondering what others are doing and trying to conform to what others are doing, either physically next to one or what one has read. And yet this work of finding out the truth of each moment, the truth of what one actually is, who and what one actually is, questioning into this or attending, it can only be done by oneself. No one can do it for one. Being with all that comes up within oneself, pain or fear, sorrow or joy. Can one be completely with it, not knowing what's next, no expectation of what should happen, no running away from what is actually happening? Just being there, without any ideas about it. Is working on who or what is it or mu. Can that come out of not knowing, go into not knowing? The who or mu or what is it being this not knowing, the expression of it? Or just attending to the breathing, to the walking, soles of one's feet touching the ground. As though one had never done it before. And start every moment as a beginner. Or is that too an idea? No one there. Then what is there?
People can return to their seats at the next